Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. And yes, I realize it has been a few weeks once again since I recorded. I do apologize, but the last episode actually did uh, fairly well on YouTube. I want to say it's now the second highest viewed episode out of every episode of the podcast. So uh, hopefully I can replicate that success, but we'll have to see. Like I said, life just gets busy. I mean, between let's see, having a birthday for my son, going to the Renaissance Fair, my daughter coming in from college a couple of times over the weekend, me actually somewhat working, I guess if you want to call it this, me substitute teaching now during the week for most days during the week. I've been very, very busy, and this episode here has actually been a long time coming, because I actually had every intention of recording it within the week after the last episode. The last episode was put out September 22nd, and today is October 14th. And so it's been, um, we'll just say 3.5 weeks, just to keep it simple. I never intend to go that long without recording an episode. Even my non wrestling podcast, the Quick Chat podcast, um, I've been not recording as many of those episodes either. I was actually recording those, 3, 4 a week, and right now it's been about once a week. So it happens, and I do apologize about that. But the reason why I wanted to get this episode out, not long after the last one, was because I actually watched the documentary on Netflix called Mr. McMahon, and of course, it's all about Vince McMahon. And I've binge watched the entire thing right there, all 6 episodes. Um, and I'm going to mention some things about it. I'm also going to talk about a couple other things closer to the end of the show as well. But the main focus of this one is going to be the documentary and really what I think about how they handle things and really about Vince McMahon himself. Because even though, yes, without Vince McMahon, Vince McMahon is probably the most influential person ever in professional wrestling. I mean, in the history of it, there's no denying that. Because Vince McMahon is the one who built wrestling to be as big as what it is today. Without Vince McMahon, you wouldn't have the the company, of course, WWE. When he took it over, he actually changed it to the World Wrestling Federation from the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. He's the one who built up Hulk Hogan. He's the one who started WrestleMania. He's also the one who started SummerSlam and all the other pay-per-views. And did he make some mistakes? Oh, good Lord, yes, absolutely. We know we did. If you've been a long-time wrestling fan, you know about the mistakes Mr. McMahon has made. However, but he is easily the most influential person ever. I mean, he went from very humble beginnings to becoming a billionaire. So, and some of that is going to be discussed. But the documentary itself has been in the works for a few years, and they actually state at the beginning of it that right before they were going to be doing the final interviews with Vince, that the latest lawsuit, the scandal about the hush money, had come out. So Vince ended up not doing the last interview. So, but so the documentary, of course, it's I want to say they could have had more about Vince's childhood because the documentary is supposed to be covering Vince McMahon. It felt more like a wrestling history documentary at times, and specifically the history of WWE and how it evolved to what it is now. And it did mention obviously the other territories because it was kind of you can't avoid those subjects and um, how he took over. He expanded his company across the country, across the entire United States, into Canada, and then all over the world. He got the other territories basically shut down. I don't think I would have done it like that. I've stated before that I think that he should have kept those companies, but maybe had them as more local developmental areas. Everything could have been under one big umbrella, but it is what it is. But one of the things I also felt they could have had more about Vince's childhood. They didn't mention a ton about it except for him not even knowing his last name was McMahon until he was 12 years old. That was when he actually met his father. I thought they could have went into more details about that. Because Vince McMahon was actually born in Pinehurst, North Carolina. Of course, coincidentally enough, that's also the same place I was born, is Pinehurst, North Carolina, along with the Hardy Boys, along with Shannon Moore, a couple other people, um, but they don't mention that because he was born in Pinehurst, but he was raised in Havelock. Havelock is along the coast. Havelock is right by Cherry Point Marine Corps Air Station. And so it's not close to Pinehurst. I mean, it's a good 4 hours away. But they don't even mention he grew up in Havelock. They don't mention him going to military school at one point. He was actually court-martialed when he was at the military school. They do mention how he met Linda. They do mention um, they met actually at church, and I think it was like Vacation Bible School or something like in Sunday school, or youth group, something they actually met at church. Um, they both went to East Carolina University. They're in Greenville, which is fairly close to Havelock, and then of course Linda was right there with him, from the beginning as far as when he started with his dad. Because once he met his dad, his dad's this promoter up in the Northeast, but they didn't move with his dad. He talks about, I've actually read other books where he talks about the stepfathers that he had and how some of them were abusive. And in fact, the one he actually had the last name of, I believe it was Luton, he hated him with a passion apparently. But they do talk about how Vince and Linda took over this arena up in Maine that had been losing money. He took it over, he turned it around, made a profit, and that's when his dad, Vince Sr., actually brought him more into the business. So to talk about that, I just felt like they could have mentioned more about that, but I mean, part of that's up. That honestly would have been up to Vince if he wanted to actually show more of that. Um, but some of the things, like I said, it was like at the wrestling history documentary. Of course, they went into the Shea Stadium show, the one that about a year ago today almost. Delicious Doyle and I actually interviewed Larry Zbyszko, the living legend, and we actually talked about that Shea Stadium show. And the undercard of the show was Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. Hogan was a heel, Andre was the face at the time. But they talked about the kind of the evolution of Hulk Hogan along with the WWE growing. And Hulk Hogan, of course, really was the first wrestler Vince McMahon put the fate of the company on Hulk Hogan's back. But it also talked about some of the other scandals that aren't spoken of very much, like the Ring Boy scandal that happened in the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s, in which a few executives were actually fired. They probably should have been arrested, to be honest with you. Pat Patterson's name was brought up then, but there have people that said, "Oh, Pat never, um, he never messed around with the underage ring boys." But according to Tony Atlas, Pat Patterson kept groping him. I'm not going to say what Tony Atlas said. By the way, Tony Atlas, I mean, he was actually very unintentionally funny during the interviews. You can't see it, especially if you're audio, but the top belt, of course, behind me is um, the big gold, and that's a 10 pounds of gold. Underneath that, you can't see it, is the Mid Atlantic title belt. Atlas actually signed that, so that was also autographed. Just figured I mentioned that, but they do mention that when I was um, kind of surprised at that they even about it because it's really brought up any other time. I mean, if you are a big wrestling historian fan like I am, and like a lot of my friends are, you knew about it, but there's been so many other ones that, as bad as what it seems, have actually eclipsed that one as far as severity. And that one was bad because I remember that one actually did make it on some talk shows. Barry Orton, his wrestling name was Barry O, of course, recognize the name Orton. This was Cowboy Bob Orton's brother, so it's Randy Orton's uncle. He was also um, part of that because he was one of the accusers of Terry Garvin and Mel Phillips. There were the other two uh, people with the company. Mel Phillips, he was a ring announcer and a referee, but he also did other stuff as well. But they were accused of trying to solicit Barry Orton for favors. But they do mention the Jesse Ventura Union fiasco, which came out, of course, years later, where Hulk Hogan got rid of Jesse Ventura trying to form a union with the wrestlers backstage, with all the boys, and I'll say all the boys because at the time there was like two women, but he was trying to form a union. Well, Hogan overheard it and he went running to Vince. And Hogan actually, kind of tries to defend it. And this as well. He doesn't try to say that he didn't. He doesn't try to deny it, but he tries to defend it, which I thought that was kind of bad for him. But I was also wondering, was this even included in this documentary just to show Hogan's loyalty to Vince? Um, but there were some things that Vince actually said in this documentary that did not do him any favors. And those who watched it already know the one big thing was when Owen Hart died that night. Vince has caught criticism, here it is 25 years later, and Vince was still catching criticism that he did not stop the show right then. Vince has tried to defend it, saying that if his own son or if he would have fell and splat into the ring, he would have wanted the show to go on because the people live, they didn't know Owen had actually died. They would have wanted to see the show. Um, I think the live audience would have understood had they announced it because it made the ring actually unsafe. It also, there was Owen's blood was literally on the mat. It was bad. It was bad form, really. Bad decision to continue the rest of the card. The live audience may not have been happy about it, but if you would have said, we had a tragic accident, we need to stop the show because of this. Because think about the wrestlers that had to follow that. All those who went after that match, they would, first of all, Owen was their friend. Owen was also, according to all the interviews you ever see with people, Owen was very well liked in the locker room. And so they saw their friend get killed. And now they have to go in the ring and see his blood, and they have to see the spot where it broke part of the boards underneath the mats, because the wrestling rings, I mean, they're a bunch of boards. I mean, they're 2x4s or other kind of boards, but that's what the rings are, and you can see the impact that actually broken part of the ring. So I thought Vince's comments about that were very tasteless and insensitive. Didn't do him any favors, like I mentioned before, and the fact that the show kept going People found out after the fact that they had literally watched a man die right in front of them. They did not make an announcement in the crowd at all. And this is before the days of cell phones, where everybody had video, everybody had pictures. Because I can't even want to fathom what that would have been like now. Also, his comments about the Chris Benoit situation, and well, um, Vince's comments basically said, "Well, Benoit was just a monster. We come to find out he was a monster." When you separate the person from what they did in the ring, from the wrestler, separating the art from the artist, yes, Chris Benoit was one of the best in the ring. Period. When you hear about things that were happening backstage, Chris Benoit, to be honest with you, was sounded like he was kind of a prick. He was kind of a bully. He could be. He was the one who would not allow the Miz to dress in the dressing room. The Miz had to dress either in the hallway or in a public bathroom because he had accidentally eaten some chicken over somebody's bag. He didn't know. And Benoit kind of, I mean, to me, that was hazing. But of course, they brought in Chris Nowitzki. Chris Nowitzki, he had um, one concussion, and he said, "I'm done." He said, "This business is a little bit too dangerous for me," because Chris Nowitzki had been studying neurology at Harvard. That's why they called him Chris Harvard, because he actually had a degree from Harvard, and I believe it was in neurology. So he actually studied this thing, and he knew what caused concussions. He knew the headshots were not good for them. So when Benoit, of course, committed the absolutely heinous act that he did against his wife and his son, and then, of course, took his own life. Nowitzki, they mentioned him. He knew about the headshots because Benoit would do the flying headbutts off the top rope, off the top of a cage. They showed that he was taking the headshots with the chair. He had done so much damage because every time you get hit in the head, that causes brain damage. Your brain, it's not like any other muscle or organ in the body. It cannot heal itself. Once the brain cells are dead, they do not regenerate. And he just had a feeling, because of all the damage Chris had taken, Chris Benoit had taken to his head, that there had to have been something there more than just, well, he's just all the steroid use. Oh, he's a monster. And that's when he got Chris Benoit's father. He got his permission to exhume the body and examine the brain. And when they did, he said it was like that of an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Vince's comments were, they actually don't get hurt. They actually don't hit each other in the head. They're professionals. And it's like, really? Um, you hear the crack of steel chairs coming off somebody's forehead. You don't think that's going to cause damage. So once again, Vince had some pretty ignorant comments and very tasteless comments, saying they don't actually get hurt. They're professionals. They know what they're doing. Yeah, and um, you see the impact. You see contact made from somebody's head from in one case, at least 10, maybe 15 foot up, and he hits his head on somebody, and that's going to cause damage. But those comments, um, and of course, as it rolls into the later part of the documentary, and this is in the last part of episode 6, and this is when the latest lawsuit comes up as they were filming. Kind of reminiscent of Bret Hart Wrestling with Shadows, how they followed Bret Hart for, what was it, a year and a half, 2 years, and they just happened to catch a lot of the stuff about the Montreal screw job because they were doing the documentary about Bret. while that was going on. Well, this kind of felt the same way. Vince, of course, he had the revelations of the hush money that they were paying for the some of the women they had harassed or coerced to doing things for Vince and Johnny Laurinaitis, and I'm pretty sure some other people in there, but those are the main two. Vince canceled the final interviews because I'm pretty sure he knew, oh, they're going to grill him about this, so he no longer did them. Bruce Pritchard made some comments after this, and they actually asked him, so what, have you watched some of the earlier stuff? He said, yeah. And they asked him, what'd you think? I thought they sucked. I thought it's a hit piece. It's a hatchet job. Da 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 da. My thought about that is Bruce Pritchard is going to be a Vince McMahon acolyte until the day he dies. If you've ever listened to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, he even when he was not working for Vince, would never ever admit Vince had done anything wrong. Yes, you know, um, he would do imitations of Vince, things like that. This case right here, it's almost like he doesn't want to admit. By the way, Vince was in the wrong. I have not actually listened to Bruce Pritchard's podcast in a few years, for a few reasons. One, I was listening to a lot of podcasts at the time, and so I kind of had to whittle them down. And even though his was one of the first wrestling podcasts, I mean, his was really the first one to get huge. Um, I just kind of lost interest in it after a while. But hearing him say that about basically defending Vince, I'm like, can't do it. I cannot do it anymore. But as far as the documentary itself, it's not great, but I mean, it's not horrible. Um, Vince comes off even worse than before because of the tone deaf comments that he was making. You know, um, they talked about the steroid stuff. I mean, they talked about WCW. I mean, they do. I mean, it was like history of WWE starting from around 1979 ish. Um, so that, yeah, they called it Mr. McMahon because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, he was kind of the focal thing. They had some good interviews with Shane and Stephanie and Paul Levesque and Linda, of course, and they had a lot of good interviews with a lot of people. The Undertaker, um, Hogan was all over the place in this. They never mentioned his own scandals from really wasn't that long ago. We're talking like 2014, 2015, when Hogan was caught. First of all, the video itself was bad enough, um, because Hogan had a certain kind of videotape put out. And then on the videotape, he was also dropping some very blatant racial terms. I'm not going to repeat them on here. I'm going to allude to what they were, but if you know the history, you already know what it was. And it was not even like something that could be misconstrued. I mean, it was flat out. I mean, he said some things that's not mentioned on here. Maybe it's because it's not a documentary about Hogan, even though Hogan's one who tries to make everything him. In this case, it wasn't. But then again, he's not the one who created the documentary. It was somebody else. So, but yeah, definitely check it out if you're a wrestling fan. Absolutely check it out. You might like it if you're a wrestling fan. I mean, um, like I said, I mean, it's not horrible. You do learn some things, and even if you're a little bit younger fan, I mean, you learn about some of the things that happened. How it came to be as far as when Vince took over all the territories and how he went against the grain, and that's how he built it. And um, yeah, so yeah, definitely go check it out. Uh, and other things that happened since the last time I recorded, almost a little over 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago. Um, WWE had a PLE, Bad Blood. I didn't think it was horrible. Once again, it was down in Atlanta, so it was going to be kind of Cody centric and kind of Roman Reigns centric. Um, Although I don't know why they don't mention Roman Reigns was a captain on the Georgia Tech football team when he went there. They don't ever mention that for some reason. The man played Division One for one of the Power Five conferences. They never mentioned him. So Roman Reigns actually has quite a bit of history in the state of Georgia as well. Um, but the event overall, I mean, I'll be honest with you, to me, it kind of fell flat. I know people are not going to be in agreement with me. Some people thought it was awesome. I thought it had some awesome, great moments, but I think the event overall just it fell flat. Um, Opening it up with a Hell in a Cell match that's going to last over 30 minutes. Good action. I know even Dave Meltzer gave it 5 stars, which is amazing because a it's not something that's held in the Tokyo Dome. Um, but I thought that that was a little bit too long. But it was a good match. That one, but you would expect CM Punk and Drew McIntyre to deliver good ones. So that one has to be expected, and that one had some high expectations. So that one's good, but unfortunately, the two women's matches, um, especially the one, I believe was it Bailey and Nia Jax? Yeah, that one had quite a few very noticeable botches. Um, Not like Nia botches from her previous time in WWE where she was accidentally like breaking people's noses and she was kind of no, these were like, hey, you didn't do that maneuver right, and it just looks very confusing. That type of deal. Um, Liv and Rhea Ripley with Dom in the cage. Dom was funny. I mean, I'll admit. I mean, him falling out of the cage and getting suspended by one leg. Um, but it really that match probably should have been better. Um, Having Rhea still chase the title as a face, it's working for now. After a while, though, somebody of Rhea's caliber, somebody honestly of Rhea's size, it's almost like she's too big to be an underdog, and so they need to rectify that pretty soon. Um, Finn and Damien, of course. I mean that one was good, but wasn't great. Bloodline against Cody and Roman. I'll be honest with you. I think the Bloodline story has kind of run its course. It's losing steam. Um, I think they're probably going to have us at least WrestleMania, but honestly, I think it's probably in there. And because every time it's a Bloodline, 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 it was good when it was a lot fresher. When it was Roman who was continuing his long reign, and then he dropped it to Cody. And Cody, ever since he's become the champion, with the exception of a couple minutes, it's been all about the bloodline. Now, one thing I did like about the event, and this wasn't on the event, this was after, and I thought this was very well done. They showed some footage. It's supposed to be like a fan was recording this on a phone out in the parking lot. Footage of Kevin attacking Cody. Kevin Owens attacking Cody. And now that's being, going to be pushed. Obviously, is Cody. It's got to be Cody's next program. Kevin Owens has turned heel again. I like heel Kevin Owens. I think he does better work as a heel. I mean, he does good work regardless. But yeah, Kevin Owens is a heel. I've always liked him better. Um, but yeah, with the Bloodline, I am getting tired of it. I just saw an announcement today. Rock may, Dwayne Johnson may not make it to WrestleMania. Also, the next PLE pay-per-view event is Crown Jewel. That's happening in a few weeks. It's going to be, of course, in Saudi Arabia. And I'm going to have to quote my friend Kyle. And, he actually had sent me a text talking about um, Crown Jewel. And he said, the Crown Jewel title is nothing but the Saudi participation trophy. And I'm so inclined to agree because they are having champion versus champion, or champions versus champions. The men's champion, which is the world title coming from Raw, going against the undisputed Universal SmackDown, whatever champion, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes and Gunther, which ought to be a good match, to be honest with you. And then they have a belt. Oh, it's the Crown Jewel champion, and they're going to do the same thing with the women. Whoever the women's champion are, I don't think they're going to be changing titles unless something drastic happens behind the scenes. But they're not going to be taking the titles off anybody. So it's going to be Nia Jax, Liv Morgan. Um, Titles are not on the line. I think there should be title versus title. But and they're going to have the Crown Jewel champions. Yeah, and like Kyle said, it's a Saudi participation trophy. I mean, it's absolutely um, what it's going to be. It's just like when Braun Strowman won the world's greatest Royal Rumble ever back at the very first Saudi show. They gave him this great big trophy and a belt, and I believe he left him there. I mean, it may make for some good matches. Which some of the matches coming out of Saudi Arabia, it was pretty obvious it was the Saudi government was requesting certain matches, and that's why we got certain matches that absolutely stunk up the joint. Um, like Kane and Undertaker going against Triple H and Shawn Michaels, horrible. Undertaker versus Rusev in a casket match. Why? There was no program. There was a few other ones too, but those are the ones that stick out in my mind. And now they're going to keep going to Saudi because what was it, 20-year deal, something like that. And they're not just making a little bit of money; they're making a lot of money, and they're making that Saudi money, which means, um, and they also have a contract with them. I mean, so it's almost like they're being forced to go. But we'll see as it gets closer to time how that's going to play out. But I know just from reading some of the stuff on the internet with the other members of the IWC that I'm not the only person who thinks that the Saudi shows, yeah, it's great for the Saudi audience. I mean, I'm glad, as a wrestling fan, I mean, I'm glad they actually get to see something like that live. But there's everything else that has been coming with it, which is not the fans' fault. I mean, it's their government and the people who are running WWE. We'll have to see because Endeavor, of course, they own WWE now, along with UFC. So we'll just have to see how it all plays out because right now, Raw is dropping down to 2 hours. Last week, I believe, was the first episode to drop to 2 hours. And here soon, that's going to be, speaking of Netflix, here soon, Raw is going to be on Netflix. SmackDown is going to be on USA. Or no, yeah, USA. And uh, NXT is going to be on CW. Everything's moving around right now. But we'll see how that one plays out as far as what comes out of Saudi Arabia. Every once in a while, you get some pretty good storylines that come out of there. Not always though, but we'll have to see. This whole you're the crown jewel champion. So, what does it mean when you're not over there? You wrestle over there twice a year, and really, crown jewel is the one in the fall. The other one is in the spring. So, um, one last bit before I go ahead and wrap this up. This Saturday, there's actually going to be a Northern Wrestling Federation show right here in the town I live in, Mount Orab, Ohio. It'll be their first show here in 4 months, I believe. Um, and this will be the first NWF show for me since Summer Sizzler, which happened back in August, I believe. Um, Either August or July, actually. I'd have to go back and look. Um, yeah, so I have not called an NWF show since then. I've only been at one wrestling show period since then, and that was um a Spot Monkey promotion show with my friend Randy. You may know him as Rescue Randy. He's been on the show before. He and I went and watched a Spot Monkey promotion show. Um, they do a lot of shows in the local high schools here to help raise money for those high schools athletic departments. And they always have a special guest. I've been to a few of their shows, um, and let's see, I've met Lance Archer, I've met Jimmy Hart, I met Jimmy Hart twice actually, um, and EC3. That's when I had EC3 sign that belt back there, the 10 pounds of gold. And the last one I went to added another autograph to that very same belt. It was Shane Douglas. And the first thing I asked him, I told him, please don't throw this on the ground. And he said, wrestlers promising, and he got it, and he signed it. I mean, he was actually very gracious, a very nice guy. I need to actually. He gave me the number. I need to call to maybe get him on the show, but we'll have to see because that would probably involve money, which I really don't have any of that right now. Which I'm pretty sure a good bit of you probably feel my pain because nobody has any money right now. That's just the way things are. And that's another reason why I haven't been going to any shows. That particular show was only like $10 to get in, and it was um, 10 minutes away from my house. Just like the one this Saturday is also 10 minutes away from the house in the opposite direction. And a lot of the NWF shows for me, unfortunately, they are 30, 45 minutes away, some cases over an hour away. And that's, I mean, it's, I'm not faulting anybody. I mean, that's just where they are able to put on the shows. Um, but it's the driving there, and really, then it's also the driving back, which for me, because they have them on, of course, Saturday nights, and I have to get up early on Sunday morning, and so it makes it a little harder on me. Um, and of course, right now with me substitute teaching, my body's sleep schedule has kind of shifted to where I'm having to get up earlier in the morning. Not only that, but the new puppy we got, which is that he's actually laying on the floor right over here, but I'm not going to wake him up. Um, but I usually have to take him outside for him to do his business, so he won't do it in the house. Also, about 5 o'clock in the morning, and so I'm at the age now where I can't just shift my sleep every weekend. I can't do what I used to do back when I was in my 20s, where I'd wake up on a Friday morning at like 4 in the morning, wouldn't go back to bed, and until about 5 or 6 o'clock Saturday morning, and or like get back to my at the time my barracks room or dorm or whatever it was called at the time, whatever base I was at. Wake up at like noon on Saturday, then like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, then turn around and get back up at 4 o'clock in the Monday. I can't do that anymore. I mean, once my body sleep has hit a certain thing, it pretty much stays there. But I'm looking forward to the show. I always look forward to all the NWS shows I can go to because they put on some really good shows. The promoters, of course, Roger Ruffin has the owner. He's been on this show before. His wife, of course, Big Mama. She's doing really well, by the way. She's also been involved in the NWA. Speaking of the NWA, I want to pass out a congratulations to Big Strong Mims. Last time we had him on the show, he was the NWA television champion, and now he's actually since lost that belt, but now he is the NWA national champion, another belt with a history behind it. So I need to get him back on the show again. Hopefully, Dwaylen will be able to join us. Once again, he's still on a hiatus from the show. I mean, sometimes you have to take care of things. We all know family has to come first. That's why I left my last job. Family had to come first, and I don't regret that. So but a lot of good things happening there. I love catching up with those guys, trying to set up interviews, and we've been playing hit or miss as far as, hey, can we get somebody on the show, or hey, can you have someone on the show? And then the communicate. I mean, we're there's been some misfires on communication, and it's just trying to get everything straight so we can get more people back on the show again. Because I'd love to have some more interviews going down. So, but that is all I have. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. If you do, if you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. I did pick up some new subscribers since after the last show aired. Thank you so much. If you're audio only, of course, give it a 5-star rating. Um, if you do give a 5-star rating, if you can give it a review, I'll read the review on a future episode. And if I don't read it, well, send me an email, armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com, and say, hey, I left you a rating. Why aren't you reading it? And I'll have to go look. Because I had a couple ratings or reviews show up recently that were pretty old, and all of a sudden they finally popped up. So, but it happens. But until I can actually do this again, hopefully it won't be 3.5 weeks, but we'll see, because you just never know what life throws at you. Because man, we got Halloween coming up, we got Veterans Day coming up, we got me doing a lot more sub jobs coming up. We got to get some money and learn some interesting things about the school systems while I've been doing this. So, but thank you once again for tuning in, and hopefully everybody has a good day. So thank you, and God bless.